Force podcast is supported by viewers, listeners, and businesses just like you. Michelle Parno has lived and worked in Lake Forest for over 2 decades. Michelle's lending experience, when combined with her real estate expertise, makes her an invaluable asset to her clients as they navigate their home buying or selling process. Call Michelle now at 847-528-8721, 847-528-8721. For the best cannabis in the world, look no further than Iliad Epic Grow. Owned by Lake Bluff's own Rich Ruzich, they are a cannabis cultivation center focusing on hard-to-find small batch products that will delight both the occasional user and ganjier. When visiting Michigan, ask for it by name. Epic Products, exceptional process. For more information, email info@iliadgrow.com. Laracy & Company CPAs, founded in 2010 by Lake Forest's own Brian Laracy, specializes in tax preparation and bookkeeping services. Earning the People Love Us on Yelp award, their process is straightforward. Just upload, review, and file. For a free quote, visit LaracyCPA.com now. That's LARISEYCPA.com. I'm excited to share with you something special from our Lake Forest community, the Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa, located at 775 North Bank Lane in Lake Forest near Wisconsin Avenue. This just isn't any spa. They offer an amazing blend of traditional spa services plus the added benefit of medical procedures and treatments. In a relaxing and luxurious spa environment, you can enjoy a range of cosmetic and aesthetic treatments. These are all performed under the supervision of top medical professionals. The Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa provides skin care, facial rejuvenation, body contouring, laser hair removal, Botox, dermal fillers, chemical peels, and much more. What's great is that each treatment is tailored not just to enhance your appearance, but also to address specific skin concerns and to promote overall well-being. So if you're looking to pamper yourself and take your beauty routine to the next level, give the Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa a call at 224-768-8028 or visit them at their location on North Bank Lane. It's an experience your skin will thank you for. We'd also like to say we're thankful for our Patreon supporters, Otto, John C., Helen, Herrick, JM, and Paul G.
There she is.
Hi.
Anita.
Hey, Pete. Nice to meet you. I'm Anita Myers. Nice to meet you.
I need a good guest today.
You did not go for the high school Anita joke that I used to hear on lots of topics, but we're not going to discuss any of those on the show. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Anita.
Okay, so I have to have like this grand meeting with Pete. How you doing, Pete?
What grand meeting?
Well, you know, I've heard so much about you.
It's true.
It's all true, isn't it? It's all true.
So how do you know Joe Weiss?
Everything that is wonderful about Joe is true. I would be good on a witness stand.
District 219. Administrator, did you expense that case of toilet paper properly?
She didn't do any of that stuff. She was just a
You
student
did.
there.
We found some old footage.
Anita was a freshman in high school when I was a senior, and she made such a lasting impression that I remembered her. Actually, I didn't. After that, you went to Bradley, right, down in Peoria. Someone else has joined us. It looks like.
Well, look at this. Well, hello, and it says Skoo.
That is right.
Well, hello, Skoo. How are you?
Skoo, here's what you missed. Joe and Anita went to high school.
Wow.
And when you go through the questionnaire, what it takes to be a guest on the show.
Anita, you look like you just graduated college. Joe.
Oh, really?
For Joe, you must be
Thank
really
you.
old looking.
But Anita then went to Bradley in Peoria.
Braves.
Big Al's.
I did.
So we got
Big
we got
Al's,
Pete-
one of the greatest restaurants around.
Right. Right. He knows.
It's like the wings at Hooters. I didn't see you for many years, and then about 15 years ago, our grade school gym teacher did this big reunion where we all played kickball on the playground by our old grade school.
You know, I just got to take a smidgen of credit on that one, just because, you know, you only live once, and I want to take something of credit. And what happened was we all were on Facebook. I think most of us all connected on Facebook and kind of found it interesting and fun, and going back in time and seeing a lot of people we haven't seen in a long time. And in doing so, you know, saw a lot of my classmates. And then I saw my gym teacher, and seeing him immediately made me think of kickball, because it was one of my favorite things to do. And I just kind of got on this moment, you know, where I said, I think we should totally go back to Middleton and play kickball. Like, let's just do it.
You've gone through a lot, good and bad, and that led you to what you're doing now. So you live here in Lake County. You're an emotional health and wellness coach, as it says right on your little Zoom profile. I don't know what CPC stands for.
Certified professional coach.
Why don't you tell us about yourself and what you do and some of the stuff how it can help some folks here in Lake Forest? Because I know Pete has been very big on mental health stuff. He's done a lot of stuff on shows here on this.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad. I like you.
Even when we had the school superintendent, Dr. Montgomery, on, when we had Congressman Brad Schneider on, and some of the legislators, Pete asked about mental health issues with them. So take it away, Anita.
Well, thank you. I guess to summarize, because we're talking about, decades of experience, and the experience leads you to doing the things that you do. But I guess I can look back now and say that majority of my life, I've always been connected to the concept of emotions, not in terms of book reading, but in terms of how we feel and the common sense of it and the lack of common sense that would be out there. And I questioned it all the time. I spent a lot of time observing. I was hard to believe, but I was a very quiet child when I was growing up.
You weren't in high school. You were not quiet in high school.
Well, I'll tell you, that's called strategy. But growing up as an only child, and I had, I know I'm not alone. There's a lot of people all across the nation and world.
I'm an only child.
You were an only. Oh, that's
and I'm married to an only child as well. So
I gave birth to an only child.
That's right. There you go.
So, growing up, I had very strict parents. And that's, again, when we look back at the strictness of things, they were looking out for me. They were trying to do the best that they could. Everything's forgiven. But when you're growing up and you are first generation born in America, and you've got cultural differences between the parents, you've got cultural differences between parent and the community you chose, the country you chose to stay in. And we are in a melting pot. There's a lot of different cultures. There's a lot. And there are things that are similar, common sense, and there's things that are just not. So in growing up, my parents were very dysfunctional in their relationship, sadly, and I grew up watching a lot of that. I know many of my friends, people I talk to, they'll say, me too. Our parents always fought, and there was always hardships and stuff like that. So because I'm an only child, I was my father's son and I was my mother's daughter. And in those experiences of trying to satisfy, and this is the thing that we all learned, we grew up in a time where, I'm Gen X. We grew up in a time where you better listen to your parents and you don't talk back, and, hit first, ask questions later. There was corporal punishment, things like that did happen, and it was normal. And I want some people to remember this. If people don't, or younger folks are watching this, Gen Zs, my daughter is a Gen Z, and she just finds it so astonishing. You look back at movies during the holiday season, It's a Wonderful Life. Everyone loves that movie. It's so beautiful. And you look back at that one part of the story where George Bailey, if anyone remembers the movie, George Bailey, the boss that he works for got so angry with him, he hit him so hard, his ear was bleeding. He blew out his ear. He blew out his ear for a mistake that was made. And we kind of don't look at that situation. We kind of look at all the bells that are ringing and everything else about the
for those days.
Those are and I hear a lot of people in the Gen X world that'll say, I grew up from the school of hard knocks. You suck it up and you deal with it. There's a lot of sleep when I'm dead. There's a lot of phrases that we took on to cope with what we went through and move forward and continue on. And that's what makes a lot of us very resilient, and we're proud of it. Now, in my growing up, I had learned from these experiences. Even when I went to school, I was bullied. I was bullied by a teacher. I was bullied by fellow students, people that were older than me, in third grade. Having to walk home from school every day for about a year and a half was really tough for me because I was just targeted. And I learned that apparently this group used to do this to others too, but I only know my story. When I grew up through school, that was really tough to go through. And then going into a house where there's a lot of arguments and fighting, a lot of pointing to me where they projected their anger upon me. The blame was going to be my fault. I didn't have a brother to blame on anything, or a sister. I had no siblings to point to. It's going to be my fault regardless. I was going to take the brunt. I also watched my mother cry a lot from bad experiences with my father. I've also seen my father get really angry about certain things. My father was not a physical abuse person. And I'll tell you right now, even though I can say these things, I love them, I forgive them. They're both passed on at this point. But to see those things take place, I just watched as a child, and I took on definitions that would tell me this is what love is. This is what you put up with. This is what you need to do. You got to be a good girl. You got to be a good boy. And when you go out there in the world, you just start seeking without knowing what's happening to you. So one thing led to another, and all the decisions that I made, some were really good and some were really poor. And the poor ones were obviously getting into relationships with people, friends, relationships that were love relationships. And then because of those decisions of really what they were was I was putting so much value and worth into someone else's opinion of me for validation of who I was. I felt like that was right. That's the way you should be. There were old-fashioned ways of thinking, and some things are good and some things are real, real bad. So by the time I got to getting into relationships when I got older, I would think a lot of people would think I was a really, really nice person. I think that a lot of people may have said, you're gullible, you just trust too well. There's a lot of feedback I would get. And it would have me thinking, like, aren't I doing it right? Like, what am I doing wrong? I didn't know my definitions. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was. I was trying to be a lot of things. Joe was saying, that's not how you were in high school. Leaving the house from what it was, I wanted to take on a sense of freedom when I left the house because that felt good to be out. I could try to be me, which is funny, silly, high energy, laughing, enjoying. But when I came back home, that was not the person my parents saw. I was very obedient, very quiet, went to my room and stayed in my room until I watched a television show, and that got me through the day. And all the television shows I ever watched were like superhero shows, like Wonder Woman and Batman and all the things that are there. When I got to being in my 20s, after college, I ended up in such a situation where all the words of all the years that had convinced me about this is how things are supposed to be ended up swirling me into a place of feeling no worth at all from the ways people had handled me, the way they talked with me or talked to me. I ended up in a terrible relationship. It wasn't a relationship. It wasn't a relationship with someone that was incredibly narcissistic and very abusive. And that almost sent me to my grave. But I survived it, and I learned a lot from it in that time of I wanted God to take me. I said I didn't want to do this anymore. I think I was done trying to be this person for everybody else at the expense of losing me. And well, God's like, no, you're going to have to stay. In Morgan Freeman's voice, God speaks to me in Morgan Freeman's voice. Just, I don't know if that's for you, but that happens to me. The girl, you are not going anywhere. You're going to stay. So I stayed, and was really grateful for the experience that I did have. I think it took me a while to kind of digest it. And all the decisions I finally decided to make, like I just kind of cleaned off what was written for me to do by others. And I kind of went to a place of building my own emotional blueprint. That's what I can say today. I wouldn't have been able to know I said that or I did that, but that's what I did. I'm like, this is what we're going to do. Okay, this wasn't working. Let's just do this the way you've always thought you should do it, but we're afraid to say anything because you didn't want to get in trouble. I always got in trouble for saying something. I'm going to just do this. And every time I made a new move that made sense, that was more common sense, and I kind of upheld it with a sense of confidence, doors would open. It became green light, go. And well, over time, I went into the world of the business world, and I worked for insurance companies, well, as a vendor, as a broker. And the behavior I noticed was similar everywhere from the time I was a child to the time I was, dating, school, environment, teachers, instructors, community, and then, the people that I worked for. I had the same experiences of, thou shalt not do this. And it's like, follow what they say and don't get in trouble. And eventually I got to a point where the damage was enough. I finally said, I think I was 34 when I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not gonna, so I left what I call the social current. I stepped out of it and I decided to build a business of my own because I saw when I was in the insurance industry, outside of what had happened with me, I
With
just
the
saw,
exception of Dakota Insurance, I just want to point that out. That Dakota Insurance here in Lake Forest that Skoo owns
oh,
would
well,
be a
hey,
nice bit.
I'm sure, when I say what I'm saying, gosh, I know it could sound like I'm putting a broad brushstroke. The companies that I worked with, I can't speak for everybody. The behaviors that were allowed in these offices are just unacceptable, irrational, poor. And a lot of people at the last place I was at, I noticed had been fired and had left due to ageism, pregnancy, lots of things. And, there were really good things I did learn from the industry, but there were a lot of poor behaviors that told me I don't want to be a part of that at all. But this is what I did get out of that that was really good, that really didn't involve insurance. It was just the fact that I was in it. I spend a lot of time telling people how to get from one point to another in the fastest way. Just what's the shortcut? I know people don't want the long route with a lot of complicated things. So, in my sense of communicating to people, I really saw myself connect. And what it was an emotional connection. I used to say, like, I used to say things like, I don't want to have a conversation, a cerebral one. I wanted to have a heart to heart one. So whenever I would be in front of a company, a CEO, an HR, whoever the decision maker was, and I came to their desk, the desk always looks so intimidating for some people, depending on the company. But I always looked at the frames, what was in the frame. They graduated from something, they got an accolade for something, they got their wife or their spouse, they have their dog, their cats, something that I could relate to, something that I could understand or I really appreciate. And I talk about that. And it wasn't really even a strategy. I was just more like, what's their backstory? And the moment you ask about that, it opened their heart to having better conversations with me. When I left this industry, I had known one thing that in the world of health insurance, that's what I was in, health, life, AD&D, that disability, all that. When I was in it, I saw a lot of employees talk to their bosses when they showed up and ask how they're doing, and they'd say fine. But I saw what was on their computers. And no, it's some things are pretty bad that I don't want to talk about. But some other things that were there, the tabs were like an email to a child, their daughter, their son who's struggling with some problem, someone else who's trying to set up a birthday party for their home, for their family, someone else who's fighting with their spouse because of an alcoholic situation. Like there's so many stories that are in that computer outside of the work that's related. So there's a lot of things about work and life balance that was really misguided. They didn't have anyone to really talk to about this. They struggled and they had to come to work and do their job. And then they had to go home and deal with whatever was going on in their life. So I eventually, when I was no longer in the insurance industry, one thing led to another, and I found myself opening up a practice that was all about really building your emotional stability so that you could really stop not like I thought that people always looked at the cost of living, the cost of goods and services, but no one really looked at the cost of, emotional intelligence, emotional stability. What's the cost if you don't have that? And it wouldn't. I think emotional stability needs to be a part of every single person's life, and no one would talk about it. In insurance, we all talk about exercise and nutrition and seeing the doctor for preventive whatevers. No one ever talked about emotional well-being. And that takes part of every single choice you make. You do, I did this, I followed suit, even though it didn't, there were decisions I made where I said yes when I really would rather say no, or I would say no when I really wanted to say yes. And I struggled with those things. And, it didn't matter how old you were. I saw it from toddler age all the way till if you're 60, 70, 80 years old. And people they struggle. So all their decisions are made based on those struggles, based on what somebody said in their past that still looms over their head. I've been there. I've been through it. So there's no coping happening. And now in the world, uh, there are poor methods of coping. There are some things we see on television among the nation on what would be considered as coping mechanisms that really aren't productive. And I think that if we could start getting a handle on understanding the cost of emotional chaos, uh, we'll start improving and building resilience that could, I think, help the generations to come. I know what I'm doing with my kiddo as a parent, what I try to tell even her friends that come to me and ask questions because they like to get that common sense answer. There's a lot of hope for the future if we have more people like leaning in on ending emotional chaos. So
You have two books, and it sounds like you just went through the superhero book. Could you tell us about that book and the other book that you have out?
the Undercover Superhero. Oh my goodness. So that one came out in 2019, and this was a book that I wanted to kind of give four viewpoints in my life, one as a young child, one as a teenager, one as a young adult, and finally the woman that I am today on overcoming emotional abuse, identifying what emotional abuse could look like. I think that it's neglected. I think that's the very beginning of many, many situations where you're tested with rude words to see if you can, if you enable it, to see if you can manage it. How do you respond to it? You know, we hear about the concept of bullying, and we think of in school how they say, you know, put your hand in front and not going to put up with it. You know, I get the point. It's great. It's true. You know, the idea is if a bully is strong, and they are very weak on the inside about things, but they're strong on the outside and they want to go for the one who's weak. And if you show by that hand in the front for young kids, like I'm not putting up with it, you're showing them that that's a force that they can't manage. So when we're living in this world, I saw through as I was writing, I needed to talk about it, that we all start off as superheroes. We all do. If you look at any children, if you don't bother them at all, they're going to think they can fly. They're going to go and get into themselves in trouble. They're going to go and jump in the pool and do dangerous things because they just feel like they could do anything. They're invincible. They're superheroes. They're created by God. Of course they are. And then society and community and family start to create this structure of what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what's okay, what's not okay, what's allowed, what isn't allowed. And I created this book to kind of show people, you know, everyone, someone like Joe may have only seen me as a certain person. The thing I was identified most as in high school, which had its own story, oh, Anita Myers, she's homecoming queen. You know, that was a tough label to have because there was a story behind it that questioned if I even actually got if this was a valid win. It was a long story for that. I had struggled through so much of this concept of worth, self-worth, because I was around so many people who, in some way or another, they they use their words to uh, belittle and shame and guilt and, you know, place me in a place that's very small. And I didn't have the confidence at that time to know I thought being obedient was the way to go. And it's, yes, I understand obedience has its place, but I wanted to make sure I put this book together to kind of show the journey that I took in identifying where emotional abuse was in every area of your life because it's there. And if you pay attention to it, if you recognize it and you have the confidence, you learn to take on the confidence. I wish no one to go through what I went through. But if you can learn some of the mechanisms of coping through a situation you can't get out of until you can get out of it. It's kind of like people that are in prison. There's one who has aspirations to leave and they do the work they need to do until they can leave, and others that just have no aspirations to leave. And the way their behavior is coincides. So as I got older and I went through what I did, The Undercover Superhero was something that showed people that underneath all the layers that other people may have placed on you, they throw dirt on you all throughout your life. And some of us tend to stay there because we don't want to go out and feel the light anymore. That if you did, that you might be able to uncover that you're actually an undercover superhero. You'll see where your talents are, you'll see where your power is, and you'll see that in many respects, there's a lot of areas where you're just invincible. You just got to keep going forward. So that's why I created something like that for them. The other book, I think you said the other book, that is called Hearts Do Matter. Is that the one you're looking at?
Mhm.
Such a colorful book versus the other one. One is a little bit
That's one I
more.
would pick up.
So the undercover superhero was obviously like more of a black and white. Here's what's going on. Here's, emotional abuse, overcoming it. The other one was it was really a poem that showed up in my head, and I'm not someone that just makes poems, but it did show up one day. My mom had passed away in 2005 to Alzheimer's. She got it around the age that I am right now. So I I watched I watched the slow death, and it's very anyone that has gone through someone in your family that has had Alzheimer's, it is really a horrible thing to watch someone go through. Very emotionally draining, very emotionally just it destroys you. And when she passed, she was in India. My father had taken her back to India, another awful story because they left me here, but without them. And I loved my family. Even if I went through what I did, I had imagined that they were going to stay here with me forever until, But she was out there, and I didn't know what was happening because my father had a massive control over her. And my mom and I were really, really, really tight. Like we were so connected. So him taking her from me was an act of control, and being all the way on the other side of the earth, of the world, with her, and me not having access to going out there or listening to them talking, that was really tough. And then I got an email out of nowhere on April 15 where he said that she died. And it was a tough experience to go through. He set the funeral 8 hours from that time, so I couldn't go to the funeral and pay my respects. So if I told you I had it hard, I did. Emotionally speaking, it was a very hard life. And to cope with it was very difficult. But when she died, there was something that showed up. I don't know. I used to be very skeptical. I'm a changed woman because these situations that happen make me go, okay. But I used to watch for fun a show that was called Crossing Over with John Edward back in the 90s because it was there. And I used to be the skeptic thinking, who's in the audience? I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he was kind of a medium that was talking about people that pass away end up giving him signals. He tells other people, this is what it is. It sounds strange. And then the people are emotional because there is a connection that's pretty bizarre. So I used to watch those because I'd want to like pick it apart thinking it's kind of nuts. It's got to be some play. And here I am bawling over my mother's passing just the hours after I learned the news and everything else that followed. And I had, in my tears, I had said, give me a sign that tells me you're okay. And there was a sign that showed up that was the shape of a heart that kind of shocked me. And as years went by from me grieving over the loss and over the tragedy of how all of this happened and the all of that, I always saw this heart show up whenever I used to grieve over my mother. Weird places, shadows, things, it just showed up in nature's way. It was never like, oh, a cookie shaped cookie cutter. It wasn't that. It was just stuff that happened in nature that would just show up. And I didn't want to put it together, but my tears made me put it together. And then eventually I started sharing this online, and I just came up with a hashtag that was Hearts Do Matter because that's what showed up in my heart. And then I decided, I'm going to write a book. It was a poem that showed up in my head. I made it an illustration that would tell people how to go from grief to gratitude when someone is no longer in your life. That just because they died doesn't mean that you can't celebrate their life, that you can see all the benefits of what they've done for you and keep some rituals and try to still enjoy that you had that love was there. So
And where do we find these books, Anita? I need to see more information.
you can find them on Amazon.
And what about you? People in Lake Forest are like, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about Anita and I could use a coach. Where do we send them?
Well, I think the best way for right now, there's a link I did provide. It's a link that just takes them to a landing page. It gives them the special sauce of everything that they can do with me. When it comes down to services, I really boil it down to three services. One is I just mentioned books, so I provide book clubs I'm sorry, 4 times a year, once a quarter. I'll provide a book that we're going to study, and my book clubs are kind of the title is Orba off-roading book adventure. We're going off-roading, you and me. We're going to look at the details. We're going to rip things apart. We're going to just, look at the details that are said by the author that shared their success. All the books that we cover are typically self-development books. So I don't want people just read it and kind of go, I read that book, I know that book, I have that book. I want them to apply what they're seeing. The signature service that I provide is Blueprint 365. It's a mentorship program. So if you're someone who's like, as you mentioned, if they want to look into coaching, what they get from me is education, training, and coaching. So we're going to educate. I'm going to train you on some things. It's got to be the triple threat of success. You're going to have to go ahead and take all that in. And where they could find all of that is just simply that same link that I gave you. If they are interested in doing that, I would be glad to. But there's also a last thing that I do, and I provide 3 retreats a year. I just launched that this year. For 6 years, I've been taking people on a retreat in Woodstock, Illinois. It still stays there, but I decided to add 2 more retreats. I think that for women, and one day I'll look into creating one for men too, because I know men need it too. Men are amazing, and they go through a
Pete,
lot.
Skoo, and I definitely need a retreat together. We do.
You do. I think it'd be so much fun. Um, but the retreats that I have at least built for now are retreats that are for women. And the concept of it is, I mean, there's a lot of retreats out there. You're flying, spending tons and tons of money. I have mine that are around the areas right now in Chicago, around the area. So within a 2 hour, 3 hour drive, I'm going to take you away and let you decompress, learn some wonderful things. It's all the retreats are designed for your heart. First one is Just Live, which I just finished up. The second one is Just Play, that'll be in South Haven, Michigan. Everyone gets to have their own luxury. We're going to glamp. We're doing glamping. So they're going to have their own luxury dreams. I'll call it a golden disco dome. They're all going to have this luxury dome that they get to stay in and spend the weekend with me, where they're going to learn a lot of things. They're going to learn the art of gamifying, and the whole thing is called Just Play. That's what I want you to do.
Do you work, Anita, with kids, adults, corporations? What's
I
your
work,
target market?
the people that I typically see myself working with are women that are age, 35 to 65, but adults and young adults, I'm happy to work with. But I do work with kids in terms of helping the parent, raising the bar on parenting so that the outcome is going to end up being wonderful for the child.
You go to
Um,
their houses or an office you have? How does that all work out?
I share everything online. Now, if there's a situation like, let's say, there's a company that wants me to come out to their location, I'm glad to do so. But nowadays, I mean, ever since the pandemic, everyone's onlining it, and so I've made it easy for them. No brick and mortar for me. I can come out if I need to, but for typical mentorship work is all online. When it comes down to creating group opportunities for communities, organizations, and businesses, I'll be glad to go out there.
Here in Lake Forest, I think there's a stereotype of Lake Forest being everybody's a billionaire, uber rich, and all that. And there is a lot of affluence in this community, though it's not everybody. But with kids in high school, especially and kids in school, not just high school, all grades, there tends to be a lot of peer pressure on kids to act the right way. And it's not just Lake Forest, it's everywhere on the North Shore. And I'm sure if you went to a middle or lower income community, that they would have those same challenges, just on a different scale. But there's always this pressure to have the coolest car, the coolest clothes, go on the coolest spring break trip, all that stuff. And I think the pressure sometimes applies to some of the people here too, that not everyone, but just, oh, if I have a dumpy looking car, people are going to judge me poorly or something like that. But there's money doesn't always equate to happiness. I mean, certainly it's nice to have it, but I've talked to a couple of our Lake Forest police officers, and they say, we get some crazy domestic calls at some of the houses you would not believe. I mean, some of the most expensive houses in town. So money is not the solution to people's problems, and sometimes it creates more problems. But so, how does your counseling? Since we have a lot of folks in Lake Forest in those buckets, how what mental health? I mean, what type of solutions or counseling would you suggest on that?
I think everything is really going to be boiling down to perspective and how people see things. And when we see money as the one focus, I see a lot of people that don't have the physical money expressed that are really rich in their heart. They're wealthy in their heart. And there are people that have, you know, what I'll say to answer this question, because I know I could say a lot of different things about it, is we have to look at emotional maturity. Now, there's a lot of people that are, they're wealthy or they have the means, and that's an excitable thing. But if something within them causes them to want to keep racing to the top, then there's an insecurity that we're looking at, because people can be satisfied as if you travel the world, if you truly travel the world. And you look at, I mean, nowadays, you don't even have to travel the world. Just travel to Chicago, go to certain places. There are people that don't have any money and they still feel their life is wonderful. And you can see that there's people that have tons and tons of money and their life is miserable. It's all about your emotions, your emotional richness, your emotional well-being. How full are you? How big is that bank account in your heart? So people feel I'll be satisfied if I have this car. And that's all learned. Those are all learned experiences. Children never thought this way. Competition is there, but now, we're looking at lots of viewpoints on competition. Everyone's got to win a trophy is one kind, and the other is earn it. Merit matters. Merit matters. So when we look at how are people getting the houses that they're getting, what are they doing inside of those houses? How, I remember my daughter made a comment because we went to an area of Long Grove, and this is not putting anybody down who's in Long Grove. It's just in general, when you see, you go to neighborhoods that have the means, big means. And she came back, and we were living in a townhouse at the time. We were there for about 18 years. And she came back to me, and as a young little girl, I'm talking like 4 years old. And she said something like, and I had to talk to her about it, but she said, big house, small heart, small house. I just remembered how she kind of looked out the window and she said it as I was driving. And I said, I thought that was so wise, like why is she saying that? And I found that interesting because of what she thought she was going to go into when she went into this one home, and what took place inside of the home was opposite of what she imagined. There was a lot of disconnection. Children go downstairs. Everything was on a screen, and there was no emotional connection between parents and the children and the children's friends. That's what was really ultimately what was going on. And obviously, our home is designed differently. So how do we solve it? I think everything in our lives, whatever is reflected on the outside, is coming from the inside. Got a messy house, got a messy heart, messy mind. Things are going on. So if you just kind of looked at your body as the house, the true house, because if everything went away, you just got yourself. If everything went away, and it happens, right? People are at the top of their game, and all of a sudden, one bad move, and boom, you got nothing. You just have
Is mental health, and that Pete, jump in because you know this topic way better than me, but I'm finding more and more, just dealing with people and everything, that we've all been trained in our lives, get an annual physical, go to the doctor, at least once a year, and some people more frequently than that for various issues. But go to the doctor, go to the dentist, go to the eye doctor on a certain day. Should everyone see a mental have a mental physical, a mental exam or something. I hate to make it sound negative, but I think we're learning that mental health is just as important as physical health, maybe even more important. And it ties into physical health.
100%. Yeah, it is. It is.
Then why doesn't insurance pay for it? Why isn't there parity? There's parity laws supposed to be going into effect, but
Some insurances do, but you're right. Not all, but some do. But
well, parity means parity. You break your arm, you get paid to get your arm fixed. Your brain's broke. First of all, it's hard to define, but getting the money. There's this thing called a DSM-5, which
Yes.
basically is a logbook of codes that says you get paid or not. And
Right.
you can't fit all mental conditions into one, little black book. So hopefully, Anita, have you looked at the RFK Jr.? Is there anything that he's going to do that's going to get insurance to pay for your services? Because you're cash only, right?
Right. When it comes to things like this, it's almost like what happened with the chiropractic world. When you're not a part of their system, well, then you're not a part of their system. And so I'm going to hope to see, I'm very hopeful that we will see more and more acceptance of what we're providing, because I know when Joe, you're saying mental health, that's a big, broad brushstroke. There are situations where people have literal conditions and they should be seeing a therapist. They're not going to see me. I'm not going to help them in that regard, because that is a need for possible medication because of the development of the brain. And however that development happened, whatever trauma took place that was so heavy, those things need to be seen by a professional of that level when you're looking at therapy. And they went through the medical system, they know the proper prescriptions. Now, going back to how life has been for a long time, there's always been like, I don't need to see no shrink. I ain't gonna go see, that's gonna make me look crazy, right? Because if you had to go get your head checked, it was always a negative light on it. Now we're seeing that it's a much better, warmer light to go to, but there is therapy and there's coaching. And I want to be very clear. I know there are many people that I've actually worked with who's come to me, and I want to be really respectful to the therapy area, the arena of therapy. There are great therapists. When I got involved with getting a life coaching certification and a relationship coaching certification, that's my background with that, and then a psychology degree. With my going to getting those certifications, I found a slew of therapists coming in to learn coaching because that worked. The idea of actual coaching worked. It opened doors. It made it more personable. It gave people a sense of safety. So you'll see, hopefully, some therapists out there that do understand the concept of true coaching. Coaching is where you're asking specific questions and receiving answers. It's inciting answers. It's influencing them, your patients, to provide answers, to think through the answers, and then, of course, giving some kind of resolve for it. But with coaching, you are only supposed to be giving a question and receiving an answer, and that's it. So I don't call my practice a coaching business, even though I do provide it in there. Mine is education, training, coaching. And I will say that I do believe that everyone should be getting some kind of assessment of their emotional well-being, because a lot of times people think it's about an intellectual break. It's an intellectual thing. I need to see a shrink. I need to see, then I hate to say the word shrink, and I know it sounds bad. That's how people would think. I need to go seek therapy. That's a first go-to. And the thing I would like to offer for those that are in that place is, before you go to a therapist, and I have a reason why, consider talking to a reputable coach. Anyone that's in your area, if you feel more comfortable, find one that works for you. Okay. But I'm glad to help you in looking at an assessment for where is your emotional stability really at? Where are you really high and really low? Do you even know where you're at? Has anyone ever asked you questions that trigger you in your emotions? When you blow up, is there a good reason to blow up? Do you have anger issues and you just have been accepted by your family? Are you using narcissistic personality types of responses when you're actually a wonderful person that is protecting something? So there's a lot of angles that we could look at when it comes to the emotional quality of your life. And when that can get to be in a stable place, the rest will just follow. I have to learn how to cope with certain things. There's triggers that have happened in my life, and everything that I teach is coming from what I've learned, what's in the books, and then some. The reason why I say check out with a proper emotional stability coach or a life coach, whatever feels good for you, is I have seen and heard enough stories of people going directly to therapy. And some of the therapists that are out there are immediately looking, and I know this for a fact. I tested something out and I couldn't believe what I saw. But some places are looking for a code. You mentioned coding. So when people are taking your information and it's like, what's your issue? What do we do? What are we going to call this? What do we want to call this? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm depressed. I don't know. Oh, depression. There it is. It's in that book you were talking about. That's the code. And immediately you're labeled as someone with depression, which everyone goes through depression. Everyone goes through anxiety. It's a normal feeling. If you're overwhelmed, that's also normal. So to get diagnosed as someone with depression that could be clinical when it wasn't, they're on medications immediately. And I couldn't believe what I heard. I couldn't believe that doctors do that. I'm not saying all, but to know that there are therapists out there that are prescription happy, and maybe it's because of the kickback, maybe they're part of a system I don't really agree with. There are wonderful therapists, but you got to really do your research to make sure you've got someone that's invested in you and not so much in putting you on a medication if you don't need it. And so I have had clients that came to me who were struggling as they were weaning off of medications that were given to them by their last therapist. They went to BetterHelp. They went to 5 different therapists. Someone said that, I've been to therapy for 10 years and I never got as much as I got from you in one session. And I'm not trying to boast my ability. All I ever did was pour my heart out and used a lot of intelligence behind it, a lot of emotional intelligence. So I hope that every single person just does a quick assessment, find out where you're at, find out what bothers you so much. Why are you stuck? Why are you so overwhelmed? If you're at the 50-yard line in your life and you already went through all of the design of other people, people in your life are going to design your emotional blueprint for the most part. You'll be taking over some things, yeah. But if your family said things about you, the bad experiences, they all create who you are. And as cool as you can be, as professional as you are, as much money as you have, the richness lies within. And if you don't have that sense of absolute fulfillment, whether you have everything or have nothing, then you should do some work so that you can only improve.
Anita Myers, author of The Undercover Superhero, Mission Possible is an Inside Job, and Hearts Do Matter. Thank you so much for coming on the Lake Forest podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yay, Anita! I'm so glad and I'm going to give a shout out to your social media. You kind of glossed over that, but every morning you've got something posted that comes up on my feed, and I when you post stuff, I read it because it's good stuff. It helps me get through the day sometimes, and
I'm happy to hear
stuff.
that.
So I really want. It's just what, Anita? What is your page? I forgot exactly.
The page is really an easy page. It's just my name. It says Anita Myers.
There we go. Yeah, that's why
you'll see.
Couldn't remember.
You'll see a picture of me on there. You'll be able to identify that it's totally mine.
There you go.
It's something where if I can reach out to people just from the heart, that's really my design. Is we're looking at the emotional structure of your heart. I'm not trying to be very scientific about things. I would keep it really casual. I think that's how we all want to meet each other nowadays. We just want to be as real as we can be. So even when I go through the things I go through, I share it. So I have my mountains to climb. But I love to be able to look at some of the mountains that others are climbing. And because I knew the route to get there faster without any slippage, and you have all the oxygen that you need, to get them over to the top is really a thrilling feeling for me. So I welcome you guys to do a little assessment with Anita Myers, or for all intents and purposes, let your friends know, let everybody know it's worth
Joe,
it.
your assignment is to meet and go through this and report back.
Yes, Joe.
Since you're the bottom of the totem pole. Since you're the bottom of the totem pole in this podcast.
I've known Anita so long, I think it would be
perfect.
A conflict. So I don't know. She might.
He's not bound by any code.
I'm not bound by any code. I'm not bound by any code. But yeah,
it off.
Joe, welcome to your life, Sherpa. Anita, I can't wait to have you back on the show and give us the progress on how Joe Weiss
they
has come
just
along.
threw Joe right at it. Poor Joe. Joe's such a great guy.
I need all the help I can get.
Well, I have a question for all of you.
Yeah.
From everything that you've just heard, was there anything that kind of clicked in with you where you kind of nodded your head on the inside? You all were so wonderfully patient listening to me, so I'd like to ask you all.
Which is very rare for this group to not interrupt and argue.
Well, I do all my nodding when I do all the editing, so we'll see. I was impressed with Skoo's contribution to the show.
Hey, listen, I'm here for you guys.
Thank you, Skoo. All right, Anita, we got to go over some Lake Forest stuff. Hey, thanks for showing up.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Anita. Take care.
Bye.
All righty. Boys, we got anything?
Well, we're going to have a guest next week to talk about some stuff with the caucus.
Who might that be?
Regina.
Bye.
She's ready. But yeah, so I guess Prue is back. She wrote an op-ed in the local paper. So I used the phrase, how can we miss Prue if Prue won't go away? She just still bitter, I think. I'm going to start calling her Boo-hoo Prue.
Melanie and
Melanie, yeah,
and
the other.
They
the
went
other,
on that.
Yeah, those two.
They went on the other podcast.
Did anyone listen? I couldn't get through it. I really tried to listen, and I just couldn't do it.
So basically,
I don't want to waste my time.
O'Reilly said,
Tim.
"Okay, we'll have you two get the committee together, or whatever the party is that's going to look at the bylaws, and then they never check back with them."
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm sure we'll get Regina's side of this next week.
I doubt it.
Right. The caucus vote is March 18th at Gorton Center, 2 to 8 p.m. For the officers. What?
No,
I believe the caucus bylaws are fantastic.
I think the bylaws are corrected, and
Hopefully she'll pay attention and not be on her phone during the whole session.
All right. So you can ask her that next week if you want. I'm sure anything's fair game. So I just, like I said, I always look at it in the context of what's the end game. All right. And the end game to me is good governance of the city. And I think right now we have, nothing's perfect, but I think this is a well-run city. I think between the mayor and the council as a whole and Jason
Ever
Wicca
since
and
its existence, Joe, it's been run well.
So 90 years of the caucus works. Everything was fine until they didn't slate Prue 3 times for mayor, and then she tries to bust it up. That's my take. You may have a different take than me, but that's my take.
Everything's been fine, period.
Everything's been fine.
Elections from ever, and
right. Nothing's
changed.
Correct. So I think, you can try and fool the people of Lake Forest, but they don't buy it. So, but let's hear it. And if the other side wants to come on, we'll do a show with them. I think we hear their side.
I think we need to stop dwelling on what happened in the past. Who cares?
I agree. That's why I said, how can we miss Prue if Prue won't go away?
Because
so who's going to be the next mayor? So is it going to be Melanie or Prue?
Neither.
God help us if it's either one.
Well, who's going to run or who's going to be mayor?
Please don't tell me Nancy Novit then. She's probably the one that the caucus is going to put up.
I doubt that.
Sure, but Kent Novid just went on that. Kent Novid was on that other podcast.
I think John Trinkle is going to run.
Turkla? What?
How come they're going there and not here?
Because they don't want anyone to hear.
Who are they afraid of?
They can't handle the truth.
Well, people live in echo chambers.
They're afraid of big balls.
I'm sorry. What?
Wait, was that Joe or me for the what?
No, I was echoing.
Oh,
I get it. Echo chamber. I
Got
say
it.
silo. We bring up the pizza place. I say echo chamber. You do the echo.
That's right. I bring the levity back to the thing.
You are Mr. Levity, yes. But I mean, I whether it's national stuff or local stuff, I don't like it when people just stop talking to each other. I just think it's not the right way to do things. I want to hear other sides of stuff, and especially at the local level, because
Why don't you
honestly,
Joe, go on their podcast, call Trinkle and ask him.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, I'll go on with Pete. I'll come on with Pete.
You can go on without Pete.
You can go without Pete.
I want Pete there. It'd be that'd be the best rated show they ever had.
I think you're our representative. Go. You're
Joe.
They like you. You're a politician.
No one will listen to me. It'll be just boring. But look, like I said, what is the beef other than?
Wait, Joe, say that again.
I know where you're going there. What is the issue that they keep dancing around the edges? But what's wrong with how the city's being run? I can't name us anything.
What are you talking about? Lake Forest is built having people that are 100% sure that they are correct.
Why don't what's wrong with the city right now? They're taking down trees in town. That's not right.
Ask Paul Heyman.
By Rosati's. I saw the email from Paul Heyman.
Paul, how you doing, buddy?
Is that I haven't been over that way the last couple days to look at it. Is there a big old tree by Rosati's that's coming down?
Not anymore, baby. It's big old roots.
It's so prominent I don't remember it.
Did they pull a Mr. T? So you're saying the city hired Mr. T as its what do you call the arbor? What do you call those title? Arbor.
I think those are all non-trees and just overgrown weeds that have grown into big weeds.
You just
so it's not like he's killing historic stuff like Mr. T did, or I don't even know what Mr. T chopped down.
They're all targeting that.
Mr. T wasn't killing historic stuff.
Oh, okay.
People just didn't like what he did to his own property.
Thorn bush, isn't it? What's that stuff called?
Buckthorn.
Buckthorn. Yeah. That's the official tree of Lake Forest.
Tell you what, if it's unmaintained, it grows into a tree.
Yeah.
What about this whole, since I think we'll talk more about the caucus next week. What about, I saw a little bit about this incident at Lake. So by the time this airs, they will have played.
That's right.
If they kicked Amundsen's, they beat Amundsen very soundly at Vernon Hills.
They got a good path, and they got in the other bracket or other division. I think Warren.
Where's the game tonight?
Stevenson are still alive. So Warren Stevenson. I think Waukegan. Good representation in North Suburban.
Where's the game tonight?
Antioch, I believe.
Antioch.
All right. What about this incident at Lake Forest College? This horrible incident where the guy tried to strangle a woman, and now he's been released because of the Safety Act. What's that?
That's
Reinhardt.
Don't let your vote go to waste, Skoo.
Well, what I heard from one of Lake Forest's finest is that they feel the state's attorney undercharged him, because if they truly charged him with attempted murder, which I don't know, strangling someone is, in my book, attempted murder, then he could have been held. So they have an order to keep him off of campus, and he has an order of protection to stay away from the woman, but it's not very assuring to that woman or to the general public that a guy who tried to strangle a woman is out walking the streets before his trial. So,
he a student?
No, he was an employee, I think. That's a good question. I don't know that part. There's also some question about his citizenship, that he's not a U.S. citizen, but
then
we'll let ICE handle that. But
can you get Republicans to come out and vote more than 20% in Lake County?
Oh boy.
Give them something to vote for. Yeah. But
you just brought up something.
Yeah, we should vote out.
Why don't we take our efforts and get people to come out to vote instead of all this other crap?
Well, people need to know what the crap is to get them out to vote. And this is part of the crap. The Safety Act is crap. Okay. So we should anybody
Obviously,
that voted
it's
for the
not
safety.
smelly enough because what is the
Because people don't
rate?
understand it. The name confuses people. Safety Act. Well, who's against safety?
How about this? VOTE, vote. They understand
How
that.
about this? Maybe what you should do is maybe have a snow cone machine or taco stand out at the voting stuff. That'll get people out.
And the early voting
And
site.
snow cones.
Speaking of voting, the early voting site for the April 1st local elections, in which our friend Jan Gibson is running for College of Lake County, has been moved because of the construction on Deer Path. It has been moved to the History Center of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, which is a little further east down Deer Path. They just remodeled that whole place. So I guess that'll be easier to park. And they may, I don't know, they may keep it there, as one story I heard, because, the voting, when it's kind of awkward going up those stairs or an elevator up to the council chamber on the second floor.
Okay.
Did you see the line during the presidential election last fall was so long that it was snaking out onto the street and stuff. So maybe a different building would be better for that. I don't know.
How would that
we'll have
change
to ask,
at the
we'll ask our friend Vinny Vega that after.
On Deer Path.
I don't know, but we'll see how it goes. Certainly with the construction, it was not the place to have it. So it's going to be, if you're going to go vote early, which you should, unless you're going to vote on April 1st or by mail,
what is
go to
this
the History
election
Center. There is Mayor Tack is running unopposed. The aldermen are running unopposed, but there are in the township, Shields Township is unopposed. I believe there's contests in some of the other townships that go into Lake Forest. I think Vernon and maybe Deerfield, West Deerfield have contests. I don't know that offhand, but those parts of Lake Forest goes into those townships. I'm pretty sure Vernon Township does, which would be like Conway Farms, that area. But so we had Jan Gibson on a couple weeks ago, and then Dawn Abernathy, who's also running for that and is also endorsed by Bill Griffin, because there's two. You vote for two in that race. Bill Griffin has endorsed Jan Gibson and Dawn Abernathy. We had Jan on a couple weeks ago, and Dawn will be on in a couple of weeks. So, we all agree CLC is important. It's an important part of our taxes. Should come out and vote. The local school boards are uncontested this time. High school and grade school are uncontested. So it's pretty much CLC is, I think, the only thing contested. At least in the Shields Township part of Lake Forest.
Shields Township Republicans, our goal is to get you to get 30% of the people come out and vote. Come on, third.
They're trying. It's just, it's kind of hard when everyone's talking on MSNBC and Fox and CNN about national stuff. That's the problem, that nobody votes in local elections anymore, and because there's no local press.
Then
we are the closest thing to a local press.
Shouldn't that be the goal of the Republican Party, to get people to come out and vote?
Yeah, it should be, absolutely, because the Democrats actually have an organized program on that. So the Republicans do need to catch up on that, because local elections matter. I would argue that your city government has a much more impact on your daily life than federal government in Washington, or even the state government in Springfield. So get out and vote, learn who the candidates are, and get out and vote, and come to and vote in the caucus meeting on March 18th at Gordon.
Can't wait to have Anthony Vega on the show, and Regina.
It's in Vega.
Gina.
All right, boys, that was earth-shattering. Thank you so much. Michelle Parno has lived and worked in Lake Forest for over 2 decades. Michelle's lending experience, when combined with her real estate expertise, makes her an invaluable asset to her clients as they navigate their home buying or selling process. Call Michelle now at 847-528-8721, 847-528-8721. For the best cannabis in the world, look no further than Iliad Epic Grow. Owned by Lake Bluff's own Rich Ruzich, they are a cannabis cultivation center focusing on hard-to-find small batch products that will delight both the occasional user and ganjier. When visiting Michigan, ask for it by name. Epic Products, exceptional process. For more information, email info@iliadgrow.com. Laracy & Company CPAs, founded in 2010 by Lake Forest's own Brian Laracy, specializes in tax preparation and bookkeeping services. Earning the People Love Us on Yelp award, their process is straightforward. Just upload, review, and file. For a free quote, visit LaracyCPA.com now. That's LARISEYCPA.com. I'm excited to share with you something special from our Lake Forest community, the Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa, located at 775 North Bank Lane in Lake Forest near Wisconsin Avenue. This just isn't any spa. They offer an amazing blend of traditional spa services plus the added benefit of medical procedures and treatments. In a relaxing and luxurious spa environment, you can enjoy a range of cosmetic and aesthetic treatments. These are all performed under the supervision of top medical professionals. The Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa provides skin care, facial rejuvenation, body contouring, laser hair removal, Botox, dermal fillers, chemical peels, and much more. What's great is that each treatment is tailored not just to enhance your appearance, but also to address specific skin concerns and to promote overall well-being. So if you're looking to pamper yourself and take your beauty routine to the next level, give the Aesthetic Lounge Med Spa a call at 224-768-8028 or visit them at their location on North Bank Lane. It's an experience your skin will thank you for. We'd also like to say we're thankful for our Patreon supporters, Otto, John C., Helen, Herrick, JM, and Paul G.